This is a quote from you that I love, and it's from a previous interview you did, or maybe something you wrote. And you said most people think VCs are rich. Typically, you said typically you have to have a decent sum of money to do all the fun setup, the legal fees, and all that other stuff. You ain't have none of that. So how do you become a VC and have none of that? How does that work?
All right. So let's be clear. You can be broke and get a job in venture. You can't really be broke and start a venture fund. So like, I got into VC because I got a job working for the state of Maryland doing early stage venture, and so I broke in working with the government. But when I started my fund, I mean, like if you think about it, like generally it takes you anywhere from 100 to 200,000 to start a fund, legal fees and all that. How was I able to do it without all of that? One, during COVID, I raised my fund during COVID, so I didn't have to pay for travel. I didn't have to go all over the place for meetings with LPs or limited partners, people who invest in funds. I could do all that through Zoom. And then I got lucky because during the process, I met this lawyer on Zoom off of Twitter, who basically asked to be my lawyer and was willing to do whatever it would take to be my lawyer. And so lucky enough, he's been my lawyer for 4 years and he's only ever sent me one bill.
Wow.
So that's how you get the start a fund when you don't have any money. It's a lot of luck and blessings. That's what happens.
And so particular to that, I remember your tweets around the time when you decided to go into VC. So I vividly remember you saying, you know what? I'm gonna do this VC thing. And I'm like, this was 4 or 5 years ago. And I remember the conversations you were having on Twitter about finding your way into venture. So, and you talked about Twitter just now. What other ways has your social media presence been a benefit to you in finding success here?
I mean, a lot of people know me from Twitter because for whatever reason, I got really big on Twitter back in 2020 and in 2021. And that's really what allowed me to raise my fund was being recognized and building a brand on Twitter. And like that Twitter brand has changed my life. It has put me at a profile where like I'm not a new person, right? I'm the same black man I was a decade ago, right? I'm a little more mature.
Yeah.
But I like my thought, like the things I care about haven't changed drastically, right? The people who are willing to listen to me has changed drastically.
Yeah.
And that's all because of the Twitter presence. And really what Twitter did was just it gave me a platform where all I was doing was helping people, talking about venture, trying to help founders, but it gave people a chance to see who I was and what I was about. And the thing I'm probably most thankful for was as I was using Twitter and gaining a brand and popularity, all by accident, like it wasn't planned out this way, but like as I was doing it, I was doing it from a very authentic just place and just being myself. And so when I went to go out to raise my fund, because I was already using Twitter, people were used to that version of me. And what I found was I found myself doing a whole lot less code switching in the process. And I was able to get to a point where I recognized because people had seen so much from me on Twitter, whether they agreed with me or disagreed with me, they were comfortable with me because they recognized it was always coming from an honest and real place. It's like, for those people who watch sports, like if you listen to Draymond Green through all his antics, most people like, oh, that man's crazy. But when you're around him, all his friends like, oh, that's just Draymond.
Yeah.
Right? Or Charles Barkley. Like Charles Barkley gets away with saying stuff that most people could never get away with. But it's just Charles Barkley. Because people have developed this familiarity with them where they're like, oh, everything they're saying is real. That's them coming from an honest place. And I found people doing the same thing for me. And that was a really interesting, point for me. Because I'm like, my whole life was about code switching. Like, as a black man in tech, like, this is what you do. And I got to a point where because people have recognized my level of sophistication and intelligence through what I was putting out on Twitter, it allowed them to get past some of the other stuff that normally gets people tripped up when they meet me.
So if I look at your Twitter, I would imagine you're spending a full day on Twitter. Like, so I'm always curious in people who are super active, because I'm not good at Twitter. Like Twitter X is one of those platforms you have to be engaged in order. Like you can't just post and then go do something else like you can on IG or whatever. Twitter, X, you have to like be engaged, be part of the conversation in order to make it work over there. So like tactically, logistically, functionally, how do you do that? How much time are you spending on this?
I don't spend as much time as people think. Well, one, I don't tweet nearly as much as I used to, or X, whatever we want to call it, right? But what I do is, number one is I don't look at my timeline. I only interact with my tweets. So I only see my tweets and people tweeting at me. It's number one, right? So that allows me to tweet, step away, and then I can come back like an hour later and I can react or comment on all the, interactions happening around the tweet, right? So I don't have to spend a whole lot of time. I just have a thought and I just put it out there, and then I'll check it every so often throughout the day just to engage in the conversation. But I don't take conversations too far. When I got people who disagree with me, after 2 or 3 tweets, I'm done. Like, I'm not going back and forth with you. If you're a hater, hey, good luck to you, right? Like, I've just learned to be able to get in and out, because otherwise you'll catch yourself on there for hours just scrolling through the timeline.
Yeah. And so what I love, or appreciate, I should say, about your story is you are not just an investor, but you are, historically a founder. Also, you had ideas. You wanted to build businesses around. Can you talk about some of those? Because I want to go deep on this one, because there's a couple things that you have said in previous interviews I want to talk about. But I want to get a landscape of what businesses you had under your belt before we talk about those things.
Yeah, so I had 2 startups that I put like real time into. The first one was called NoBadGift.com. Eventually we got into it's called Given To. It was originally a platform for people to crowdfund money for gifts. So create a wish list for any day or event, and people could crowdfund money towards things that you like, things that you wanted. We eventually pivoted that to a platform that could purchase anything from Google Play or iTunes digitally and distribute in the form of a link. So that's the technology we eventually sold to a Fortune 100 company. And then my second company, RareBreed, was an e-commerce platform. Think Instagram with a buy button before Instagram had a buy button, right? Like 5 years before Instagram had a buy button. So those are the 2 companies, 2 very different journeys and paths, but
Yeah.
It's the thing.
So what I wanted to get to was this quote I read from you. You said, "I was depressed and locked myself in the house for 6 months after the second startup failed." And so what I want to talk about is being an investor now, because there are a lot of investors who never started anything. They just invest capital, and they found whatever skill or I should say they found success in doing that. Not necessarily skill or whatever, because there's a lot that goes into having skill doing it. But having the experience of being on the other side of the table, how do you believe that helps you add value to startups?
So, and something that comes up in our industry, in the venture industry, a lot about this idea of being a founder makes you a better investor. I fundamentally disagree with that. I don't actually think having operating experience or being a founder makes you a better investor. And that's just core to what an investor does, right? An investor's job is to make more money, right? Having experience as a founder doesn't necessarily make you better at that, at being an investor. But what it does do, it does help you win deals, because it allows you to connect with founders better, right? Like, a founder can call me at 11 o'clock at night and have a horror story about something that they're dealing with, and I can walk them through it, like I've been through it myself, right? But from that quote you talked about, having, when my second company failed and locking myself away for 6 months because I was depressed and like didn't want to go anywhere, didn't want to do anything, because everything in my life was wrapped up in startup culture, startup world. Like, I didn't have anything beyond that. Is that whenever I do have a company shut down, when a founder calls me to tell me about it, I immediately stop the conversation. I don't want to talk about the business. I don't care about what went wrong. I don't care about it shutting down. Like, that's not what we're here to talk about. I want to talk about you. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What's going on with you? It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be depressed. If you need to go get yourself a doctor or a specialist, we will help you, get your first few sessions done, like whatever you need. But let's just be real and talk about the human part. Like, this hurts, right? I don't get into the business part or trying to do a debrief, because like that's the founder trying to do the respectful and right, be a good steward of the money. But like that's not really what you need in that moment. That's not really what's going on. Like if anybody who's ever had a company fail knows how much that hurts. And like the crazy of emotions you're going through, you've ruined yourself financially probably. You're trying to figure out how to figure that out. You probably ruined a bunch of relationships and things going on in your life. And now you got to go back to people. Like there's so much that goes into it. So when those things come up, like I have had the experience where I can talk them through that and I can be empathetic, where it's not just transactional, it's not just about the money, right? Because at the end of the day, as a pre-seed fund, we're going to invest in close to 50 companies.
Yeah.
I don't expect all 50 of those companies to make it. There's no world in which all 50 of those companies make it, and that's okay. So you not making it's not the end of the world. You being okay and having a path forward, that matters.
Yeah. I want to dig deeper on this another way, because I've heard venture, or actually just technology startup land, be called the money game. And I'm sure you've heard that phrase, like the money game, before. Like this is the gold rush in so many different respects. And I want to dig in on that particular phrase, the money game, because you just said something that sparked a thought of the job of a VC is to make money. That's the job. And so often, we're raised with this, the world is a place that, you can do good things and you get rewarded for doing good and all these things. And while some VCs may present themselves of wanting to have more good things in the world, at the end of the day, can I make money doing this? So I want you to talk about the landscape of the money game, if you could give us kind of like like what that means to you, and then dig into what VCs are actually there trying to accomplish.
When we think about the money game, what we're really talking about is the American dream. Like, how do I achieve wealth? How do I start from wherever my starting point is and get to a point where I have the potential to be the richest person in America, or richest person in the world, right? That's what everybody's trying to achieve. And what we see today, the number one way that's positioned to us is go the entrepreneurship route, right? Because if you can be a founder or a CEO, an executive, that's how you make all the big money. That's how you become Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, right? And so the pathway to doing that is like, okay, I'm gonna start a business. When you start a business, you need resources. If you don't have resources, where do you go? All right, most traditionally, you go to friends and family. Depending on who you are, where you're from, that's limited. Then you got banks. All right, like I don't know about you, but I don't know many people could just walk into a bank and just get a $50,000 loan to say, "Hey, I'm gonna start a franchise."
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I do know people who can. I just don't know a bunch of people I grew up with who could. Right. And then on the other side is this idea of these other type of investors. These angel investors, individuals investing their own money, doing really interesting things. And you got VCs, these institutional investors whose jobs are, we give you money so you can make more money, right? Those are like your base options. And it's hard now because the option of ventures changed, right? We see this kind of cycle every 10 years or so where it becomes really easy to get in, money's flowing. Think, before the .com bubble pop, every, .com website's getting a bunch of funding, getting large valuations. Pet.com is $1 billion company. And then the bubble pops and it goes to zero. Everybody's freaking out. And then it's really hard to get money.
Yeah.
Right? We just experienced that. It was really easy to get money in 2020, 2021. 2022 comes, there's a bubble pops, and now it's really hard to get money. So one of those options that people went for to help them go for that American dream if you're starting as an entrepreneur, it's a lot harder to get to than it was, call it 4 or 5 years ago. And it's only getting harder. Now, will it loosen up? Sure. But that's not a time that you as a founder can guesstimate on, right? So all you can do is go out to solve the problem you went out to solve. And I think this is what I talk to founders about a lot is you can try to game the system as much as you want, right? And when we're talking about the money game, right? The money game is what it is, You want to do good for your community, like, hey, I'm gonna do the Tom's thing. You buy one, we're gonna get one free. That's cool and all, but what's even better is if you just get as much money as you can, become the biggest company you can, and then be like Shea Moisture. After you exit, go ahead and start giving out to the community in really large quantities. You'll actually end up helping more people that way than trying to do the Tom's things, which may or may not work, which may or may not be the reason why your company doesn't make it, right? Like at the end of the day, get to the making the money part. If you make the money part, the ability to do good will be there. All right, but today that game is harder. Venture's harder to get to, and when venture's hard to get to, getting loans is hard to get to. Interest rates are crazy. But what I will say about the game is, for the founders out there, learn the game. Understand what venture's about. Understand when somebody says the power law, what that means. Understand what investors are caring about. If you're a black founder out there and you're building something that's just core to you for the black community, that's awesome. That doesn't mean you got to tell an investor as soon as you go into a pitch, this is only for black people. Because in most cases, it's not anyway, right? Go and say, hey, this is here. We're going to change the world. We're going to help a lot of people. And if it just so happens your initial go-to-market strategy is you're only marketing to black people, ain't nobody ever asked you about that. They just ask you how your numbers doing, right? Yeah. Like again, it's a game. Because you're trying to get to whatever your goal is, and there are ways to get there. But learning some of the rules and how to play it, it may at times feel like you're compromising some morals or not being authentic. But I will tell you, if you play the game right, you don't have to compromise yourself to do it. And you come out on the other end, making it easier for the next person to come through without having to pull up any of the BS. Right.
Speaking to that, what characteristics are you looking for in founders? When you see founders, you know what, I'm going to bet on that person. I got 25 grand for you. I got 50 racks for you. I got 100 for you. What is it typically that they've displayed?
It's typically they've displayed an ability to execute, right? You have a plan that you've been able to work through. You figured out how to do, you figured out your customer acquisition, right? You've really, really, really keyed in on how you get customers. I mean, too many founders that are so keyed in on their product, they have no clue how they're going to get customers, right? That is a red flag for sure. And then I'm looking for like the little things, like being smart, having grit, like those are kind of table stakes, right? But I'm looking for like, how do you treat people? How do you treat your co-founders? How do you deal with hard problems? How do other people around you treat you, right? The way other people treat you is very often a reflection of how you treat folks, right? Like those are the little things that come over time that are kind of part of what we call it pattern matching. Like I'm not pattern matching for what you look like or what you wear. I'm pattern matching for like who you are as a person and how you execute, right? So I'm looking for, like, I give you an example. We had a founder that we were really high on. We knew we wanted to invest in. And then on a catch-up call, the founder's like in their warehouse pouring sweat. And he's like, yeah, sorry, we've been working really hard all weekend and all this morning. We found a way to rearrange our warehouse to make it more efficient. We're like, okay, but you're a broke startup, so where'd you find some people to help you rearrange? He's like, I just got a bunch of our drivers to come in, got some beer and pizza and just stay. I'm like, so you mean to tell me you got a bunch of people to basically come around for free on the weekend to rearrange a warehouse? That ain't something you see every day, right? Like so there are these founders out there that have this magnetism. Like that's something that stands out. Or I had another founders in the beauty space doing nail polish. And he said, hey, 85% of the industry is Vietnamese, but none of the major nail polish companies have a Vietnamese version of their website. He said, we're going to make our website a Vietnamese version. We're going to hire a Vietnamese liaison to work with these salons. Like, that's a really small thing, but that's a really big thing, right? So it's things like that, like you notice, you learn to key in on. Those are the things that kind of separate the greats in my mind.
You've been intentional about trying to support, fund, invest in underrepresented, overlooked founders. And typically, or I should say more recently, we've seen when people say, okay, I'm looking for black people, that's under attack. And so obviously, I mean, there's a lot of stories that people can go and do your Googles on that. But being an investor who wants to make sure that people who historically have not been able to access capital can access capital, how does the landscape change for you?
It doesn't change for me in the fact that like Rare Breed as a firm doesn't have a diversity mandate. Like we invest in everybody. Our only mandate is to invest outside major tech hubs. I saw a venture firm, and I know of others who basically sent out a message to their investors saying, "Hey, all of our companies founded by Black founders, we're lowering the valuations of all of those in our portfolios because we don't think they'll be able to raise money in the future." Like, that's a real thing, right? And so the big thing for me is I try to do this whole thing of like, we don't invest in diversity, we invest in amazing companies. Don't really look at the faces behind those companies. So that when I do have, oh, these companies are doing really well, these are amazing companies, these are driving our portfolio. If it just so happens that there's a bunch of diverse faces behind it, well, that's really cool. And then that gets to be a feather in our cap, and that gets to become part of the larger story and narrative in the future. Yeah. But in the meantime, people aren't excited about that. It's interesting. It's different. It's not exciting until there's points on the board. And points on the board is exits and money getting returned. Right? So like we're in an interesting space, and like I'm an advocate for diverse founders, right? But that's not what we exclusively invest in. And so it allows me to get around some conversations. But like at the end of the day, I'm still a Black man. That's still the first thing everybody sees or thinks, right? And so like, yes, it can be limiting. Yes, in times where it's harder to raise money, when people think that you're investing in an industry or in a market that they view as being small, then they're not excited, right? Another advantage I have though, is because of my Twitter presence and social media presence, it gives me an opportunity to push back against that at times, and it gives me the opportunity where people will take meetings with me where normally they wouldn't have. Where I know other folks who look like me may not get those meetings, right? Just because of a popularity I've been able to gain off of social media. And so I'm aware of that, and I use that. But like, yeah, investing in Black and brown or diverse, it comes and goes. It's in vogue for a period of time, then disappears, then comes, then goes. All we got to do is whatever resources we get in those times, we got to use them to the fullest.
Yeah.
Because what we can't do is get a bunch of resources, and start, and then those resources get pulled from underneath of us, and then we're left behind, not being able to get to the finish line. And then everybody points back like, see, we did that experiment, we tried that, we gave them help at one time, and it didn't work out. So like in this time, we got to make sure that we're just putting points on the board. So, yeah, we got a diverse portfolio, but I need my Black and brown founders to outperform so that one day I can point to it like, hey, we don't invest in only diverse founders, but our diverse founders do really well. So people who do that, you might want to look at investing in those folks too, right? Like, we've got to build these narratives.
There is a goal or something I would love to see in the world, and that is more Black and brown founders being able to turn down VC, turn down specific VC, because what we hear, and it shocked me when I learned about it years ago, that there were founders who said, you know what, we good, our round is full, there's no other room, and there's VCs like, oh, but take my money, and they're like, no, we good. And I'm like, I want to see more Black and brown founders be in that position to be like, nah, we good. The round is full. And so with that comes foundationally of the VCs who got in, other value they provided other than just the capital. And so my question to you is, let's say you've got $100 to invest in $1,000 round. What other value do you believe RareBreed Mac provide that allows them to say, you know what, we want them in on this round because their $100 is the same $100 as somebody else, but we want Mac in here?
I would say first and foremost, the first thing I tell all my founders after we agree to make an investment is they get my cell phone number, and I tell them, you now get the ability to treat me like an employee. That means you have my cell phone number. That means you have the right to spam me. Whenever you need something done, you let me know what it is. Doesn't matter what it is, right? That's number one. Number two, we come with a human first approach, right? I do this, like I give you, it's a small example of something I do for my founders. I'll do a thing where I'll send one of my founders through their Cash App or Venmo $100. And I'll be like, hey, been doing a lot of great work recently. I know it's been a long week. I know there's a lot going on. Here's $100. Go get out of the office early day. Go to the movies. Go do something with your wife. Go do something with your kids. Go get yourself a massage. Go give yourself a spa day. Just a thank you to you, right? And it's just an acknowledgement of how hard they're working, right? Like, yes, as the VC, yeah, all these founders want to come to me to get the money. VCs are the ones who are lucky to work with these founders. We're lucky to work with these founders and get to support them. And the journey is hard and lonely. And so being able to support you as a human through that. So we go about that a little differently. And then at the same time, you know, if you need to get in touch with somebody, get connected to somebody, trying to get somewhere, thanks to the large social media presence, I'm 1 or 2 tweets away from just about any and everybody. And I'm 1 or 2 degrees away from just about any and everybody. So if you want something, we can connect you. We can get you in front of the right people, you know, get you connected to the right folks. So that's how we help. I mean, I've done everything from help a founder that got picked up by U.S. Marshals get out of a crazy situation to, you know, needing PR help, to needing a CTO, to, you know, needing more funding, more money to get a round done, right? Like, we've done it all. But that's just kind of, you know, that's part of the game. When we're in it together. When you get this money from RareBreed, we are now partners, and we only get money when you make money. So let's make it together.
What type of startups or tech are you interested in?
I'm interested in startups and techs that are founded by dope founders. I don't really care about industries or verticals or all that. I care about amazing entrepreneurs. 'Cause that's what's going to make a company grow. Especially, we invest in pre-seed. What I know of pre-seed is that within 3 years, your company's probably going to be something different. So I'm not going to focus as much on that as I am on how you go about executing. So we invest in dope founders.
So to give a B-side to that, what trends are you interested in? What excites you about what's happening in the world right now?
I'm excited about all the possibilities AI is offering for all these other industries, right? Not for AI, but when we look at, you know, when you look at beauty, being able to be smarter with skin tone matching technology to help those with darker skin tones be able to find the right color matching for their makeup, right? Having AI support technologies that better understands the texture of your hair to help you better understand which products to use or which tools are right tools for your hair, right? Like, I'm excited for how AI is going to be opening up a lot of these other industries. I'm also very excited for some of the deep tech and hard manufacturing technologies coming out. We've seen a lot of success with deep tech and future manufacturing, so I'd say those that gets me excited. But generally speaking, you know, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. If you're a dope founder making a good company, we can probably work together.
Pre-seed has more, I think, more unique inroads to getting your attention than, you know, a Series A or a seed, you know, startup, because you're probably getting stuff from people you've never heard from, don't have warm introductions, et cetera. They just, well, this is the question: how do they get your attention?
Any way they can, whether it be on Twitter, LinkedIn, Discord. I had somebody Venmo me money for my birthday one year with a link to their pitch deck.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty creative, man.
Right? You know, the cold emails, the text messages, right? People get to me any way and every way. I'm fairly open. That just means I don't get to everybody that reaches out to me, right? But for the ones that do, they come any and all ways. And I'd probably say the easiest way to get my attention is shoot me an email where you just lay out your metrics and your numbers, right? If your traction's killing it, like, you're going to get me excited all day, every day. That's a simple one. Or if whenever you send me your information.
What does traction mean at pre-seed? What is traction? Because I mean, am I doing 10,000 a month, 100,000 a month, or am I doing $70 last month and $100 this month? Like, what's pre-seed traction look like?
That's such an unfair conversation for founders, because, you know, VCs say traction all the time, but what traction means is how fast are you growing. But, like, founders always, to your point, they want these metrics, like, what do I need to hit? I always tell founders the metric you need to hit is more. right? Because I could tell you 20,000, that'd be great, and you go out and be like, yo, Mac, I'm doing 40,000 monthly recurring revenue. Come rock with me. That's amazing. But when you come to pitch me, you're not just pitching against the metrics or your space or your competitors. You're also pitching against all the other companies I'm gonna see in a given time frame. So even though I said 20,000 in monthly recurring revenue and you got into 40, well, 3 days ago I met a company doing 60. Right? Does that mean I'm gonna pick that company over you? No. But now I gotta get to all the other things, right? And so the more traction you have, and all traction is a proxy for execution, but the more traction you have, it's just an easy way for me to start to separate, out of the 50 companies I'm gonna speak to in a 2-week period, 10 of them are doing north of 10,000 in monthly revenue. Okay, of those 10, which of these are the most interesting?
Dig that. I want to leave with this last question that I thought was salient from your father, and where you said, do you want to be the rapper? Or do you want to be the person who signs the rapper's checks? And so I'd like you to set the stage for how that conversation came up, and then what you got out of that.
Yeah, so I was in middle school, and a good friend of mine who's a classically trained pianist started making beats. So he's trying to become a producer. I'm over here like writing, raps to any beats he's putting together. And so my father hears me one day, writing and practicing. And he's like, hey, what you working on? I was like, I'm working on a song. Me and my friend were doing this, whatever. He's like, you doing this because you want to be cool, or you doing this because you want money? I like, because of both. We don't want to be cool, but like, I'm definitely in it for the money. He's like, well, if you're in it for the money, I would suggest that you look into the person who signs that rapper's checks. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, who do you think makes more money, the rapper or the person who signs their checks? Do you know who those people are? I don't. So my father made me go down to the library and go do research on the music industry. At which point I found out the people who sign rappers and singers checks make a whole lot more money than the stars that we like, right? And so that started to change my mindset. And so what that ended up leading on to was I stopped rapping, and I started putting together other local artists of other middle school and high schoolers in the area I knew, and started a rap label. And my one claim to fame was I got a song on a local radio station, and I got a group to open up for Murphy Lee back when Murphy Lee was still hot. Right? And that's like the beginning of me as like an entrepreneur. Was like, oh, I no longer want to be the rapper.
As a win, opening up for Murphy Lee.
Yeah, it was a win. Pops was right.
Mac, so good to be with you, my brother. This was good.
You too, Will. It's been great to see you grow over the years and create this empire. Love to see all the work you're doing. Love to see your success, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Keep it going.
Thank you very much.